Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guests on the programme are Clare and Jeremy Wilson, authors of How Hard Can It Be? Clare, Jeremy, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for coming. I've got your book here, How Hard Can It Be? What a read. I don't think I've ever read a book quite like this book. So it tells the story of your life and let's start at the beginning. Where were you born and brought up? Clare?
Oh, I was born in Berwick-upon-Tweed, and then we moved to Dundee in Scotland and then moved down south to England. So I've got a very mixed up accent.
And Jeremy?
I was born in Portsmouth, lived outside Portsmouth all the way through till I was 18, when I went up to Manchester as a student and stayed up there for almost near enough 10 years before moving back down south again.
And then where did the two of you meet, Clare?
Oh, my sister introduced us. Jeremy was in a band with my brother-in-law, and she said, "You must come and hear this guy, you'd really like him." So I did, and that was it.
I thought you were too young. Because Claire's sister's 10 years younger than me, and so I assumed that her sister would also be around about the same age, and you are younger than me, but yes, so I didn't look twice because it's not the done thing. But no, we then got talking over text, didn't we?
Yep.
And things blossomed from there.
And you've been married how long, Jeremy?
20 years now.
21
years. At the end of the year.
When it was time to, hey, let's have a family, tell us what that season was like.
It was about a year after we got married, and we went away, and Claire made this big thing that we were going to go up the Eiffel Tower. We went to Paris for a trip away, and Claire made this big thing that we went up the Eiffel Tower. She wanted me to propose something. Us already being married, it was clearly not going to be a proposal of marriage, and so I said, shall we have children? Shall we have a family? And Claire said yes. She was very pleased. That's what she really, we both had talked about it and really wanted a family. And we kind of assumed, as people do, that it will just happen naturally from there, except it didn't. Now,
Claire, you got pregnant quite easily.
Yeah.
But then what happened?
I miscarried about 10 weeks into the pregnancy, and then that became a pattern for about 7 pregnancies, and just kept miscarrying at the same time. So we were talking, and Jeremy said, "You've really got to go to the doctors, this isn't right." And so we went to the doctors, and then that started a whole chain of events. He suggested doing IVF. So we kind of talked about that, whether that was something we wanted to do. And yes, it's quite a lot of decisions to make.
And then you did do IVF.
Yes.
And what was the outcome of that?
So initially, it felt like it was being successful, but then I lost the baby again. So by this point, I'd had 11 miscarriages. And we'd been offered 3 rounds of IVF on the NHS. So we decided that we would try again. And we did a second round, and then I got pregnant with twins. And it was just the best feeling. We actually managed to get through a bit further, and we had scans and had pictures, and it just felt like it was going to happen and we were going to be a family. And then I miscarried again, just as we were about to tell our family and everyone that we were pregnant. So we didn't get that moment again. And then we did a 3rd round of IVF, and that didn't work at all.
How did the two of you cope with that? What was your faith like at that time?
It was hard.
Yes.
Honestly.
I think anyone that said that sort of thing would be easy would be lying. But it was hard. It was hard. And we're talking about over quite a number of years that this was happening. So it's not as if it was all in the space of 1 year. There was a period of time passed. So it was a real roller coaster through that time of the ups and downs of maybe this time, not again. and it not happening. And it does take a toll on your faith. Yeah, I can't say that we necessarily sailed through and never wobbled or never wavered, because that wouldn't be true. Or we did sit there and go, why? You know, why us? What is it? Something we're doing? Is it? You know, what is it? And really just questioned. And yes, it wasn't easy. It was a struggle at times, but we did cling on to our faith. And I think sometimes it did feel like clinging on rather than. It was something that we had to work at to maintain.
And did you conclude, Claire, well, maybe we're not going to have children?
No, I still held on to hope and still believed that God would give us children, and still would pray to God in the middle of the night and say, please, can you just answer our prayer, fix me, or show me what to do to sort things out. And we talked about adoption. That was one thing we were going to do at some point in our lives, because we loved the idea of adoption and felt that was God's heart, and we wanted to kind of mirror that as well. But our plan was to have our own kids first and then adopt. It was kind of how we'd always, you have this plan in your head.
But then you found yourselves going to a meeting about fostering. How did you end up going to that meeting?
Well, we've been through quite a period of change in our lives. We'd made a move from where we were down into Somerset. So it was new house, fairly different jobs. Everything had changed, and I don't know how you found out about it, but Claire came to me and said, "Should we go to there's this meeting about the council are running, this session they're running about adopting and fostering and adoption."
And it was more about information.
It was an information evening,
Yes,
an information evening. For those that
Yeah.
might be thinking about it or want to know
Yes.
more or might be considering, come along and find out some more information.
And we'd given ourselves space to grieve and mourn, because as we moved, we decided, well, that's probably going to be it. We'll just be us. But I think in the back of our heads, we were like still hoping it wasn't going to be just us. But yeah, so I came across this leaflet and yeah.
So it was more than information. And then the next thing you know is someone's visiting you.
Yeah, we'd signed up. I signed us up.
Yes. At the end of the evening, they said, and if you'd like to take it further, fill in this form. And before I know it, Claire's there with a pen clutched in her hand, scribbling away and signing us up to the next step, which was someone coming and knocking on the door. Well, they rang up and arranged an appointment, but coming in the house and starting to ask questions, which was...
And that was about fostering initially.
It was really about adoption. No, it was about adoption at that stage. So they were really talking about adoption and what it would mean to adopt children. And so they one of the things that they drove home at this information evening and then was driven home time and time again was, you won't get a baby. If you want a baby, adoption isn't the thing. You don't get babies. It's always, children that are 2 or 3 years old and maybe older than that. And there's a big need for people to adopt older children. So, it'll be older children. And that's something we also had to come to terms with, because I think there's something about becoming a parent where you imagine this holding a baby, holding your child, cradling them, nurturing them, taking them through those early months. I think anyone, once they've done it, goes, well, could I skip that? Could I skip those sleepless nights and jump straight on? But I think you still imagine it to start with as being that first step. But they make it really clear, or made it really clear, that wasn't what was going to happen with adoption. But no, the visit was the starting for them to work out whether we were suitable to be considered to be adoptive parents.
And then
very carefully couched words there. And,
yes.
It wasn't. There was nothing formal at this stage. It was you were being judged the whole time, and it was very clear you were being judged.
But then you went through the process, Claire, and you were considered suitable.
Yeah.
And then what was the next call? You had a call that said...
Yeah, we were on our way we decided could you get approved to adopt, and then you get matched with a child. And just as we were going to be doing that, our social worker said, I've just been to London and they're doing this wonderful way where you foster the baby and then you can adopt it. So the baby's case is going through court at the time. and you're fostering, but the intent is that if the case goes your way, you'll adopt the baby. So the baby stays with you and you take on the risk. The child doesn't take the risk, and it's placed in a home where they know they're going to be the parents. So the child doesn't have that heartache of being moved from home to home, and they can just be with their forever parents from the beginning, which was just wonderful for us. But it's a risk. And she said, we've never done it in Somerset, so you be guinea pigs. Do you want to do this? And we were like, actually, this sounds, we would. It just sounded right, if that makes sense.
And so you said yes.
We said yes, and then booked a holiday to India. And we were on the way to the airport when our social worker phoned and said, we've just found a potential baby that might be the right one. It's not been born yet. And we think we're going to go with this baby as our first kind of case to try. Would you be in? And we were like rushing to the airport and about to check in. And so we said yes. And then she said, I can't tell you anything else, that's it, and put the phone down. And so we spent 2 weeks on our holiday just talking about this unborn baby, praying for him, because we knew, obviously, he's going to be harmed. It's not going to be a simple case. We didn't know it was a boy as well. We just knew there's this baby. And we prayed and we talked on our holiday, and that's all we could talk about. So our last hurrah was more about talking about a baby than...
And then what did you then discover, Jeremy?
Well, we got back, and that's where it really became a whirlwind, because we still, at this point, hadn't been approved to adopt. So we still needed to go through what they call adoption panel, which is the formal sitting down and being told, yes, you're allowed to adopt, where you get questioned on all sorts of things, by this panel. So we did the panel on the Tuesday. I was working in London at the time, so after the panel, we went and had a nice lunch, and then the next day I went into London for for 2 days. And while I was away, Claire got a phone call saying, "You've been approved to adopt, and the baby's been born, and we'd like you to and we're going to go for the what they called fostering to adopt at the time. It's now called early permanence, but we're going to go down this route." So could you come to County Hall on Friday morning for a meeting? So we did. So I came home as planned on the Thursday night, and on the Friday morning, bright and early at 9 o'clock in the morning, we walked into County Hall expecting to have a meeting and find out some more details about what was going on. Except that's not what happened at all. We walked into County Hall and were shown into a room where three other people were, four other people. There was a social worker, a man with a camera, and these two other people that we'd never seen before, who actually turned out to be William's birth parents. And this turned out to be a Meet the Birth Parents meeting, and shortly after that meeting, a Meet the Baby meeting. So this day, when we thought we were just going to go and find out what the plan was, actually turned into a meet the baby who's eventually going to become your son. So a real whirlwind of a day, wasn't it?
And one of the jokes me and Jeremy have had through the years, he always says to me, what would you like for your birthday? And I always said a baby. And we met William on my birthday. So we always think God has a wonderful sense of humour.
Amazing.
He just kind of tied it up.
On your birthday. When did you discover, Claire, that your son had some health concerns?
At the hospital, Jeremy got told when he was taken away that William was the worst case of drug abuse they'd ever seen in a baby. And they didn't expect him to live or to even meet any milestones if he did. And so we'd already signed up, in a sense, to this. And we just thought, we're all in.
So but they never told you.
No.
Not until we got to the hospital.
Not until.
In fact, I think it was even a couple of days after that we found out the true. Yeah, they said he's been born addicted to heroin and a big list of other things. And then it was a couple of days later they said, "Oh, by the way, he's actually the worst case we've ever seen." And we didn't think he was going to survive. He was nearly 3 weeks old by this point. We didn't think he was going to survive to this point, and we don't know what the future holds. But he seems to be meeting milestones at the moment, which was great, because they didn't think he was going to be meeting any of those at the time he was born.
And then you become his mum and his dad, and there are certain health challenges. So what were the symptoms?
It took quite a while for him to withdraw from heroin. He sneezed a lot. That's one of the things apparently a baby does. They sneeze when they're withdrawing. And it's like a really bad case of flu was how it was put to us. But we found things like I couldn't wear perfume, strong smells would set him off. We had to swaddle him because he was just twitching the whole time and he just needed to be held 24/7 and noise, anything, just sensory things. And it was just heartbreaking to watch a little tiny baby go through that. And he was born premature because she'd taken an overdose to get herself into labour because she was angry that she had a baby inside of her. And you just think, why did you do that? You know, but we can see God's hand is on his life through this whole thing because he's amazing, and he just began meeting milestone after milestone, and we just loved him and prayed him through this time and held him and didn't know what we were doing, but kind of,
So you're adjusting to having a baby, but you're adjusting to having a baby that has got some serious health concerns, which must have been challenging and testing for you both. I mean, it's hard enough nursing a baby anyway, but nursing a baby with this sort of situation.
While taking him, he had to meet his birth parents 3 times a week for an hour's visit. So we had to keep taking this baby to meet his birth parents because the case was going through court. So they couldn't presume he was ever going to stay with us, and he may be returned to his parents, even though it was very unlikely. But the birth parents wouldn't turn up to contact, and we'd be there waiting. William would be hungry because we weren't allowed to feed him. They wanted us to leave the feed so that the birth mum could feed him. And so it's just, and she smoked very heavily. So he'd come out smelling of smoke. And of course, smoke and the smell would just send him twitching again. So we'd have to change his clothes in the back of the car before we drove home. And it was a hard time.
But you just exuded the love of God for him.
And it's just, we prayed him through at night, holding him, just prayed for us as well, because we weren't sure what we were doing.
No.
And then he eventually...
And there aren't many books on,
on
drug-addicted babies. Not that we have ever found.
And then eventually, would the term be he detoxed, or what's the...
It took about 6 months.
It took 6 months.
6 months.
Yes, before...
To get it out of his system.
To get that out of his system. And there were still things that we had to be careful around, and still are. He still overstimulates very easily. Noise noise and light are big stimulants that we still have to be careful of, and remove him from if we see him starting to struggle in those sort of environments.
But he's a healthy boy.
We went back at 2. He had to have a review, and they said he's amazing. Just we didn't believe we'd see him at 2 years old, and just wonderful, wasn't it?
Yes.
So one son, but how did you end up with number 2?
We decided when William was 2, you have to have a 2-year gap. And we thought, actually, we really love fostering to adopt. And we'd been and spoken to different groups of people about it and tried to encourage people that this is a great way of adopting because you take on the risk and the child doesn't. And so we decided to go for it again. And so I just phoned up our social worker who we'd just kind of kept
in touch with. But
you got to know.
Felt like we'd just managed to say goodbye to, and then we invite them back into our lives again.
Yes.
And she said, let's go for it again. And because it had been around 3 days from getting approved to having a baby, we thought, actually, it's going to be really quick. We'll have a baby in no time. And kind of 6-7 months in, there was no baby because it has to be the right case for them to do. And we were getting quite disheartened, and we opened it up to look through the whole of the UK, and we found a little girl who was 2, and we thought, actually, maybe we'll just do the traditional adoption route. But that all fell through. And she said, look, we really think fostering to adopt, it's a really great way to do it. Please, would you like to do it again? And we said yes. And we waited another 4 months or so, and there was still no baby. And we had this conversation, and I said, look, I've given up all hope of ever having another adoption like we had before. Let's just phone up and say, really sorry, but can we just pull out? We'll be happy as a family of 3. I don't have any hope. I don't know what to do. And so the next day, you'd gone off to work and I was playing with William and the phone rang. Hey, we just had a phone call and a little baby girl got born yesterday, and we were wondering whether you would take this baby. And I said, oh yes, that'd be a brilliant little girl. And she said, oh, by the way, her name is Hope. And I just thought, it just says God all over it for us, So we started again.
Now, she had some health challenges.
Yeah.
She had health challenges, but in many ways, very similar health challenges.
Yes.
Again, parents were drug users, so she'd been born with some addiction issues, not as severe as William by a long way. She was ready to come home from hospital at a week old rather than the 3 weeks that William was, and some sight issues as well. But not quite as bad as William's issues, but Hope did have health issues as well.
But now you had a little bit more experience.
But no more time.
No.
Because this phone call that happened was on a Thursday, and they said, oh, can you come in and meet her in hospital on the Friday? So we went in to meet her at something like 9 o'clock in the morning, I think it was, that we walked into the hospital. And we were shown out again at 11 because the birth parents were on their way to visit. And we were told, oh, by the way, she's being discharged to you this afternoon. So all the baby stuff very quickly out of storage and set up around the house again. Cot set up, all those things that you need for a baby, and a scrambling to mother care to spend a fortune to try and get everything set up again, ready to go. And yes, arrived at, what time was it on the Friday?
Tea time.
Yes, tea time on the Friday. Suddenly this baby arrived. So 24 hours, and we had the baby there.
So not only one son, not only one daughter, you then have a third.
Yeah.
Tell us about the third.
That was a surprise. We thought we were done and finished. We were happy as a family of 4. And I was taking William to school when this woman came bundled out of the house opposite the school, which was unusual because we're in the middle of nowhere. And she looked at me and I looked at her, and she recognised me and I recognised her and realised it was William's birth mum. And then she stood up and this guy was kind of taking her out of this house, and she was pregnant. And I thought, oh no, she's got a baby. So kind of bundled William out the way, got him in the car, drove home, and we had to report it to the police because we weren't quite sure why she was at William's school. And it turned out she split up from her other partner and was prostituting to get money to buy heroin. And she'd got pregnant, didn't want the baby, but was under the influence of drugs when we saw her. And so social services got involved straight away, and they said, would you take this baby? And I really struggled, if I'm honest, and I wasn't sure because I'd known what William was like, and Hope was 9 months old. And I said to Jeremy, I'm not sure we can do it again. I'm not sure I can go through it again.
Yes.
And you were very, I can do this.
We can do this. Yes, I felt that we really should do this, and that was the right thing to do.
But it's almost like another God appointment, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
The fact that you met your son's birth mother.
Yeah.
I mean,
after all these years.
After all these years. So you then have another.
Yes, with only it's.
She was born just before my birthday. Yeah. So I got another baby for my birthday.
Another birth.
So.
And then had to.
She had withdrawal.
Withdrawal, and you had to go through all of that again.
With a 9-month-old and a 4-year-old.
Less than 10 months aged gap between them.
And did it take another 6 months for the drugs to kind of go through?
24/7, and you kind of took over the care really, because we were still just about to adopt Hope. We hadn't quite got that through yet, so that was all kind of going through.
And it had to be put on hold. We had to actually put Hope's formal paperwork on hold because we weren't allowed to be doing 2 adoptions at the same time with that small age gap between. So we had to buck the system slightly to with social services blessing, but to get this to go through. And it was
3 children, healthy, loved, It must have been hard, but it was worth it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We'd do it again.
We'd do it again. Well, no. 3 is enough, thank you. But,
Sure.
But no, if we were back where we were at the beginning, we would do it again without any hesitation.
In the right at the end of the book, I wrote this. You said this, which grabbed me. And this is right at the end of the book. You wrote, "Weathered, yet somehow stronger. Our faith simpler, yet deeper." That kind of sums up your journey.
Yeah.
Beautiful words. Weathered. Obviously, you were weathered, weren't you? You know, it's that, I think the word conjures up, you know, beaten down, but I'm reminded of St. Paul, isn't it? Crushed, but not in despair. And I like it the way that you said that our faith simpler, yet deeper. So you've grown through this process yourselves.
I think it can be easy to say you have faith and you do trust, and then when you have to rely on it, it's something different from, it stops it being just words. It makes it something practical that you actually do. You learn to rely, you lean on, you have to trust in a different way, and it stops it being just words and just something that you say, because I think we can get very blasé about trotting phrases like that out, and it's only when you actually have to do it that it really becomes real.
And it becomes a choice. We had to choose to trust God, that He's in it. And those little moments throughout the story just confirmed that God's there, keep going. You know, and then the times we really struggled, other people came in and helped us and just said, "We've got this, we'll pray for you. You just get on and do what you need to do, and we're going to pray you through this." And it's those moments that helped us, and yeah.
You're honestly full of admiration for what you've done and for what you're doing, and pray God's blessing upon you, Claire and Jeremy, and your 3 children. Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lovely to talk to you.
Oh, how hard can it be? Wow. Claire and Jeremy's story, it puts so much of what we're all facing into perspective. Truly inspiring. I'd encourage you to read their book. Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon. Please join us again.